Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Catherine, and if you're not new here, well then welcome back. So for today's video, it's going to be a little bit of a story time. In my car, as you can see, I figured I wanted to do a video just on my year journey as a nurse. I officially made a year beginning of March, and I feel like I've now had enough time to kind of reflect what the hell happened this last year being a nurse pretty much all through COVID. My first year was all COVID. Now being a nurse for a year now, I feel like I've had a lot of time to just reflect on what I've learned and all the stuff that I've been through, the ups and downs, and kind of just let you guys know what's going on and, you know, how I got through things and exciting stuff that are coming next for me. So before I just keep babbling on, I'm gonna take you guys to the beginning. I'm gonna try and make this not so long. But yeah, this is gonna be a little bit of a story time. So I figured, you know, this is different for me, but I'm also excited. You know, I kind of did story time with my NCLEX experience, and I feel like a lot of you guys really liked that video because I was really kind of truthfully honest on how it was not easy for me at all. That's why this is going to be another video of just me being truthfully honest of how crazy my first year was. It wasn't pretty. I was, you know, I went through a lot. So let's get started. Let's take a sip. This is the dragon drink from Starbucks. It pretty much is kind of like the pink drink, except instead of strawberries, it's the dragon fruit with coconut milk. And this one is so much better, I think, than the pink drink, in my opinion. And I really wish I would have gotten a venti because I'm almost done. But yes, scratch that. Now let's get started. All right, so from the beginning, I got my first job in January of 2020. That's when I went through my interview, and that's when I knew I got accepted. My official start date was February 3rd, which was still like, you know, before COVID became like a really big thing. So started February 3rd, and for me at least, my orientation the first like 2-ish weeks consisted of just classroom stuff. You're going to a classroom with a bunch of other, not necessarily new grads, but a bunch of other people who are starting a new job. And there you go, you take classes and they separate you. You know, that's where we learned, for at least me, I'm in a telemetry unit if you guys don't know. And so I learned EKG strips, how to use a defib machine, how to take finger sticks, IV insertions. Those are big things because you don't learn that in school. What else? Also, we learned how to change central line dressings, which we don't really do in the hospital, which is weird. We have people that come and do it, but we learned all pretty much these like little things, how to draw blood and the different tubings with, you know, different labs. So that's kind of what we did for the first 2 weeks. I wasn't necessarily on the floor. So after those 2 weeks, started on the floor. So the way my floor does it, we start like 2 weeks on days. We'll be on a day rotation, and then they'll bring us to nights. Unless you got hired for days, then you'll only be on days. But since I got hired for nights, I did start, you know, 2 or 3 weeks on days. And they do that just because on days you see a lot more. It's a lot more hectic. There's a lot more people around. They go for more exams and tests and things like that. So you kind of get a feel of everything. And on nights it's a little bit quieter. You still see similar things, but you're not really doing discharges. You're not really going on tests unless like it's an emergency kind of thing. So that was kind of how my first couple weeks went. Training altogether with the 2 weeks of classroom was about, I want to say anywhere from 9 to 10 weeks, I want to say. So while I was still going through training, I did my days on regular floor. We were still regular telemetry. Once I got to my night rotation, that's when things started to get crazy. So I remember my first day on my night rotation, my floor was completely empty. No patients, nothing. And we were all super confused. And this is when management brought it upon us that we were going to be COVID. You know, no one asked us for opinions. For some reason, our floor got picked. We have the most rooms and we have the most isolation rooms. So it kind of was like, okay, like your floor is just kind of best. I don't even think management had a say, but at the time, you know, a lot of us were very, I wouldn't say angry, but they didn't even give you a heads up. You know, we just walk into work one day and it's an empty floor, and it's like, okay, we're gonna be waiting for the first couple of COVID patients to come up. Obviously we're all terrified. None of us know, you know, what the hell COVID is at the time, especially, you know, me being new. already trying to just learn Tele, and now, you know, things are totally different now. Now I'm dealing with COVID and the symptoms with that, and so that happened. So I remember my first 3 days on nights were that an empty-ish floor. You know, we were getting patients, but it wasn't like a big overflow like how it got like once months, you know, passed by. So that's kind of how my training had started, on nights at least. So I got like a couple of weeks doing just regular Tele on days, but then once I got to nights, things got different. So since I was still in training, obviously they want you to learn stuff. So the decision was made that since I was still on orientation, that they wanted to move me to another floor that was still just telemetry, you know, so that I can keep training on a regular floor, because COVID, you know, you weren't really doing Tele stuff. And like I said, a lot of it was new to us. So a lot of people were just trying to figure out like how we're going to do things, how are we going to, you know, set up the floor and things like that. So it was new to a lot of people, and they just felt like, hey, it wouldn't be very beneficial for you to be here when we're trying to figure things out, which I understood. So I went to a different floor, a regular telemetry floor, and I did 3 days there, and that already was the worst 3 days of my life. So understand, hey, I'm new, I'm not off orientation, I'm still on orientation, and you're still supposed to be teaching me. I'm still at the point where I should be getting taught. So I had this one nurse, obviously not gonna say her name, but I had this one nurse for all 3 days, and she kind of wasn't there for me at all. A lot of things that I were doing were like, you know, either I was doing it for the first time. Like I said, at this point I've only received day rotation training, so I'm starting night, so it's not like I've seen a lot, like, you know, I still have a lot to see. And she kind of wasn't there at all. She would be in the break room, or she'd be like in the nursing station, like away from me. She'd be like, all right, like just pass your meds and like let me know when you're done, things like that. And there was things that like I hadn't done at all for the first time. So I, of course, as you know, me being super nervous, I'm not gonna just attempt it on my own just because I'm like, all right, like she left me. I would ask her like, you know, hey, like I really haven't done this before, could you teach me? Could you be there while I do it? You know what I mean? Like I said, I should be still getting taught. And you know, she kind of like gave me a look like, okay, she didn't even want to like teach me, which I don't understand. I feel like people who become preceptors, like I really hope that, you know, you actually want to do it. You know, I don't feel like you should ever just do it for like the little extra pay that you get for being a preceptor. You know, you're teaching a nurse, and in the sense you don't want to teach them badly and then, you know, have safety issues with patients later on. Like that's just horrible to me. I would never ever agree to teach someone unless I felt like I really could teach them. So that's the vibes that I got from this nurse, that, you know, she didn't even really want to teach me. I get it was very last minute, so I kind of like gave her the benefit of the doubt, like thinking like obviously this wasn't planned, so maybe she just, you know, got stuck with this. I don't know. At the same time, she still could have said no. There's tons of people on the floor that could have trained me, but whatever. So that was already kind of an issue. She, like, even to teach me something, she kind of was giving me attitude. And then even like with giving report, like of course you're nervous and stuff, like giving report, I feel like it takes time for you to kind of get the rhythm of how to give report and how to, like, you know, tell the story about the patient and why they're here and what meds they're on and what tests they've done already and what their plan is. You know, it kind of takes time to get that rhythm. And that's actually also another video I wanted to do of how I set up my brain sheet, because I feel like now I've kind of perfected how I do things, but you know, we'll get to that on another video. But so yeah, giving report kind of takes time, and it takes, you know, time to kind of get that rhythm of things. So I was really bad at report in the beginning. I just like struggled at, like, you know, how to start it and how to end it. Like I was just like, I was bad, I was nervous. And she just like made me feel awful about it. Like made me feel like I don't even know what's going on. And like, instead of teaching me, she'd be like, no, that's not how you do it. That's not how you do it. And I literally like freaked out. I like was scared of her. And at that point, I would use all my time, my free time, to like research these patients and write every single little thing down, which as a nurse, like an experienced nurse, like, you know, that's crazy. Like knowing every single detail about a patient is sometimes almost impossible if they've been there for like 36 days. An upcoming nurse doesn't want to know how they were from the first day all the way now to like the 50th day that they're here. It just almost seems irrelevant, especially if like it has nothing to do with why they're here, still here now. But I would use up all my time. I wouldn't even take a lunch break, because I would use that hour to, you know, write down everything I could about this patient. like I said, absolutely insane. But I wouldn't even take my lunch break because of it, because I wanted, when I had to give report to next following nurse, I wanted her not to have anything to say. But it didn't even matter how much I did. Every time I gave a report, she had something to say. So at that point, every single day after those 3 days, I did it 3 days in a row, I would come home crying every single day. I would just, you know, I would start questioning myself, like, is nursing even for me? Like, can I even do this? I was miserable. And I remember on my 3rd day of just being miserable with her, I came back to my floor to just grab my stuff because I still kept all my stuff there. And one of the night nurses, she's someone who's been there for a long time, and she saw me like really upset and crying, and I told her what was going on, and she's like, all right, look at me. She's like, when you go home today, you are going to contact the educator and tell that you are not going back to this floor. She's like, if you're going there just to come back crying every single day, then whoever's training you should not be training you. And she was so nice and just like taking care of me. It was such like a sense of relief, like, because I thought it was me, and I literally told her, like, I'm considering even quitting. Like, this is just not worth it to me if I'm crying every single day. Like, she made me feel like I was so dumb, and it was horrible. It was miserable. After that, it kind of had worked out that their floor ended up turning COVID, so they just brought me back to my floor, since like, what's the point? So I got lucky in that sense. But either way, like, the educator really understood. She was like, not every preceptor works well with the preceptees, and you know, every personality is different. Some work best with others and vice versa. So either way, I think she would have been really good about giving me another preceptor or transferring to a different floor, whatever the case may be. Either way, I just felt really good about that, at least that I felt validated in my feelings and that I wasn't crazy. So I ended up going back to my floor nights. And at this point, I'm with the girl who like helped me with all of this and comforted me, and she was my preceptor, and literally just like the best time. She is so good at teaching. I think now, like, she's trying to become an educator, and I'm like, you couldn't pick a better job, because she's so good at teaching things and just making you feel good about what you do. And like, if you don't know something, she just like will teach you in such a way that you're like, oh my god, like I know exactly how to do this now, because just the way she teaches, it's just so magical. I know it sounds like out of this world, but she was so good at teaching. I definitely learned the bulk of my things with her, and she was always so willing to help you with anything, which of course she should, but she just like was on top of you, but like in a good way. Like, she just wanted to make sure, like, hey, like I understood what I was doing, and if I needed help, like she would give me space, but she was always right there, like outside of the room if I needed her, you know, instead of like being in the break room and being not around. If I had a question quickly, you know, I kind of need to find you. So she was so good about being right there, like ready for me if I needed her, and giving me the autonomy to like also be a nurse and like, you know, practice what it's like to be on my own. So after that, things were great. I was on my floor and I was learning, you know, really well. And at this point, it is around, I would say, May or June. I want to say March. I was on my own, I would definitely say by end of May, beginning of June. So at this point, I am off orientation. I'm on a COVID floor / tele, so things are definitely weird. But it was nice with COVID because they really tried to be good about giving us nice nurse-patient ratios, considering like with COVID patients, you're donning and doffing with every patient in every room, and things just take a lot longer. So normally on a tele floor, I would say you have about 6, 7 is like, okay, like worst case scenario, but normally 6 patients. And with COVID, they were giving us 4. So being new and being in a different environment, 4 was definitely nice and manageable and doable. And then, you know, we kind of get hit with another bomb. Well, not really, I guess for me, it was like the worst time of my life. So at this point, our unit is like a 42 bed unit, pretty big. And at the time, like I said, COVID really wasn't that crazy. So now, since things aren't that crazy and we don't have like a full census on the floor, they start floating us. Which I feel like I don't even have to say anything else, because if you know what it's like to float, that's all I have to say. It's gonna take a sip. Floating. even to this day, being an experienced nurse, I hate to float. I hate it. I just absolutely hate it. I don't think I'll ever enjoy it. And in the sense, like in the beginning, I feel like I had a good reason to be like freaked out because I was just off orientation and they were floating me to other units now. So I'm now starting to get used to COVID, and now you want to switch my environment again and us go to other units where it's not COVID, and the way we do things COVID and not COVID are totally different. You know, just to give you some examples, like with COVID, none of the medications are in the bins. We just take everything out from the Pyxis and we'll go into the room with our medications because we don't want any extra, I'm blanking here. We don't want any extra meds or, you know, syringes, tubings, anything in there that doesn't need to be there, because once that patient leaves, everything goes because it's COVID. So they wipe down, clean the whole entire room, and you start over with a new COVID patient. And also too, pharmacy wasn't gonna go don and doff in each room and take out each bin. So that was the difference. And so all the bins were in the Pyxis room. So, but yeah, things are just done differently. And the patient ratio is different. So you're going back to 6-7 patients. So it's just different. So me being new, I freaked out. Every time I had to go and float, I would pray that it wasn't my turn to float, because every day before work at this point, I was hysterically crying. And this is kind of when like my family, you know, my boyfriend, you know, everybody was kind of like, what the hell is happening to you? And this went on for months. I would say this happened from June, that I was truly depressed. I would say from June to like October, November-ish. And what I mean by this is, like I said, every day before work, I would cry hysterically. I would call somebody to calm me down before work. It usually was Nick, and I would cry and cry, and he would just have to be comforting me. Like, and I know like it's so hard, like you really have to give credit to people who, you know, the loved ones that are, you know, trying to help people who are like really, you know, dealing with anxiety or in depression, because I feel like it does take a toll on them as well. And if like, imagine me doing this almost every day. Like I can't thank, you know, all my loved ones enough, because every day was the same thing. You know, I cried about the same things. I talked about floating. I was always talking about this, and I was miserable, and no one could really understand why. I don't blame them, because at that point I probably sounded crazy, but I was going through the most depressive, suicidal state in my life. I did not want to go to work, and at this point, with also having extra nurses, they were also giving out PTO. So, you know, 1 or 2 nurses would float, maybe 2 nurses got PTO, and they left like maybe 4 nurses on the floor. At that point, I was calling out a ton. I would use up all my PTO. I just didn't even care. I didn't care. Anything to not make me have to go to work, I would do. At that point, I was wishing like someone would break my damn leg. That's how bad it got. I would do anything not to go to work. And I also even too started therapy in August, and I did a couple sessions on there. I would say like 3 to 4 sessions, and it helped a little bit. But at that time, like, you know, it's COVID and they're not doing in-person sessions. It's all through like the phone or Zoom. And I felt like, you know, trying to develop a relationship with someone is hard, you know, over the phone and through Zoom, and it wasn't the experience that I wanted. And, you know, there was nothing I could do about it at that time. So I did stop the sessions. And, you know, it's something that I definitely would love to find someone else once things calm down a little more, and, you know, I'm able to, you know, go in person and really like connect with someone and really, you know, get that one-on-one experience. So at the time, I was going to therapy. I was crying before every shift. Every single shift before work, I would have to wipe off my tears as I left the garage and walked to my unit every single day. And I was calling out for PTO. I didn't care. I used up all my PTO. Like, and when I say used it all, like I almost left myself with 0 at that point. And it was just that bad. I was miserable. I was actually like disgustingly miserable and super depressed and very just not happy with where I was and how things were going. And I was scared. And there were some other people who were kind of newish. They were probably like 4 months ahead of me, and I like got close to them because, you know, they too were also super scared. And I know floating is just one day, but it just like scared the crap out of me. And the experience I had going to another unit, being trained by someone else, and just how unhelpful they were, you know, being around people who you don't know and not having like the people that you know to have your back, just like really scared me. You know, it was just like the whole new environment, having like a big patient load and switching environments every other day. It was like a lot. So like I said, that kind of really happened a lot up until October, November, I would say. And then we started to get busy, so we no longer needed to float. So that was like alone a stress reliever, knowing that like floating had kind of died down and we weren't doing it as much. But yeah, it was really, really tough on me. At that point, was just trying to find any other job. I didn't care. I was like 6 months at the time, and all I wanted was another job. I'd apply to every single thing, email anyone who I knew who could get me in somewhere. I was trying literally anything just to get out. And even though I didn't get any responses back, it gave me pleasure knowing that I was trying to get out. So yeah, so now it's October, November. Things are starting to pick up. Our floor is full. We have 2 COVID ICUs. Things are at like the highest point at this point. You know, COVID is really real, and it's really hitting hard on everybody. COVID on its own was another thing. You know, you go to work and you don't really know what to expect. And, you know, I've seen a ton of people die this year, which is crazy to say. And, you know, I know people die in the hospital, but, you know, almost every other shift there was, you know, someone who was actively dying, who we had to call a rapid response, and, you know, they got intubated right there in front of your eyes. It started to become normal. You know, things were depressing, and, you know, on top of me already being at like not such a great state, and work not only it being hard, but also even more depressing, because, you know, things are sad. You're watching a lot of people have to say goodbye to their family members via FaceTime or the phone because they couldn't risk coming and getting COVID as well, and risking other people in their family who were immunocompromised or had little kids at home. And then, yeah, you have to, you know, there comes post-mortem care. A lot of us left work just super sad. I wouldn't say even miserable, I just think super sad. Just, you know, you kind of leave work defeated, I think is the right word. You know, you feel like you could have done more, you wish you could have done more, you wish that you didn't have to tell people's loved ones that they didn't make it, or that, you know, you did everything you could. That's never a good feeling. I know that we don't necessarily tell them, the doctors do, but sometimes they want to talk to you because you've been their nurse 3 days in a row and you built this connection with them. So there was a lot of families that I think, you know, we got connected to and we got really close to, and when things didn't go the way that they were supposed to, when unfortunately they didn't make it, I feel like in a sense you feel like, you know, you had lost someone, and that you're telling, you know, people that you're really close to that a loved one didn't make it. So in that sense, I felt like things were really hard at work, but I felt like I was learning things at a more rapid pace because I kind of had no option. You know, I got really comfortable with emergencies and calling codes and knowing when, you know, a patient needed that more critical care or needed to be intubated and they were on the highest amount of oxygen and they weren't doing well, and, you know, you telling doctors and them like kind of being like, oh, well, you know, they're still satting okay. Like, okay, it doesn't mean that they're okay. And I would call the rapid anyway because I knew that they, you know, needed to be in like an ICU and watching them get intubated, and you kind of like thinking to yourself like, you know what, I was right, I knew it. So it was a lot of, you know, definitely advocating for your patients, and I feel like I was doing that at a much rapid rate, like learning a lot faster and not being afraid of calling codes. I feel like that's like one of the things that new grads are really afraid of, because they're just like afraid that, you know, they won't know exactly what to do. Or I feel like that was like the easy part of my job at that point, you know, calling codes and putting oxygen on patients and things like that. Like that was the easy part of my job. The hard part was just now dealing with seeing people go and then they leave the unit after you've done postmortem care, and then you get an admission and they take over their bed essentially, and you do it all over again. It was kind of non-stop at that point. You had no time to really reflect on what the hell just happened. You don't have time to have feelings or react, because now you have a new patient here and now you have to focus on them, and now you have to do it all over again. And so that's kind of how it was going at that point. This is going on probably until January, and by January I was like applying everywhere. At that point I was like pretty much almost a year, like a month before, and I was applying everywhere. I was like, I'm getting out of here. I've realized that Tele, you know, Tele was never ever my thing. It wasn't anything, it wasn't what I wanted out of school, and I think I've talked about this before, but it was, you know, the last thing I could ever want. But, you know, it kind of just worked out. It kind of just worked out that, you know, this was like the only job that at the time was coming to me, and you know, the reality is I had loans to pay, I had bills to pay, and I couldn't wait. So I've been applying everywhere, and I'm hearing back from little things like, oh, like fellowship starting. A fellowship was like really something that like I was interested in. I liked just how, you know, you had 6 months training and it's very specialized, and they really like take the time to teach you. And I was leaning more towards the operating room fellowship. There were some people that had left my floor to go to the OR, and you know, they really loved it, and I just loved the idea of it, and so it was something that I was interested in. Another thing was, you know, I was on nights, and I feel like nights was also making me depressed, because, you know, as everyone's coming back from work, I'm going into work, and while everyone's sleeping, I'm awake. And you know, my days off, I'm trying to catch up on sleep, but I also want to see people and do things with people. So I think that nights also had an effect on why I was so down, and you know, why I was so sad going into work every day. So the OR was like an evening job, and I know I really loved the idea of that, and so I was really heading towards that. I had thought about the NICU. The NICU was pretty much the reason why I felt like I wanted to become a nurse. I did my capstone in the NICU and just like absolutely fell in love with it, and I always thought like, okay, like this is where I have to be. And the nurse that, you know, precepted me there during my capstone, we still kept in contact. We have each other on Instagram, so we're always kind of keeping tabs on each other. And she knew like how much I hated my job, and you know, she always, you know, tried really hard to get me into like anything that's pediatric. So I'm applying to a bunch of things. The fellowship seems like it's kind of going somewhere. The next one's not until July, so it's not like it's close, but I did everything she had asked me for the OR. I shadowed for a day, and that also kind of confirmed to me like, okay, I could see myself doing this. I've sent her my resume, I applied to the actual job, so now it's kind of like a waiting game. Then comes March. It's a year of us being COVID. We were the first unit to ever turn COVID, so we've been COVID the longest, and now it's coming to our year anniversary, which is crazy to think that it's been a year, but it's now a year since we've been COVID. So I guess at this point, I think all of us are kind of, you know, overwhelmed and exhausted by just how critical COVID patients can get, and you know, the toll that it brings on us and our mental and physical health. And I guess that, you know, there were certain nurses on our floor who were telling the managers that they just needed a break, that, you know, it was becoming a lot, and without any kind of preparation or letting us know ahead of time. Now administration, they put us in COVID without letting us know or giving us a heads up, and now they wants to completely swap 2 different units. So essentially we would be going, all of us, PCAs, managers, teletechs, everybody would move to another floor that's just completely tele, and that floor, all of their staff, managers, teletechs, PCAs would move to our floor and be completely COVID. And a lot of us didn't take it that well. I think there was pros and cons to both. The idea behind all of this was being in something so high stress for long periods of time will only hurt us as we move forward and in our futures, and that is something that they didn't want for us. You know, they were more than grateful for us to have taken on this role as COVID nurses, but they also didn't want to ever do anything to us that would essentially affect us long term in the future. So I understood that part. You know, I don't think that you see how bad it affects you until you step away from it. It's kind of like an abusive relationship. I don't think that you realize in the moment how bad it is until you step aside and you get away from it and you're like, holy cow, like it affected me that badly. So a lot of us, you know, we're just, I think, more upset that we never have a say. You know, I feel like we're just like little kids and we're kind of being thrown around left and right. So that's essentially where we are now. We started this the last week, second to last week in March, and it's different. You know, going back to 6 patients after only having 4 for almost a year does take a little time to get used to, and things are just busy. With COVID patients, you know, a lot of times they wouldn't do certain tests until they tested negative, unless it was an emergency, obviously, but a lot of times they would hold off until, you know, they could be in an OR. Things right now are just like, you know, whatever at this point. So the idea was to do this for about 4 months, and then in 4 months, you know, we'll bring up this discussion again and see how COVID is doing. Do we still need a COVID floor? And, you know, can we move it to a smaller unit? And then all of us kind of go back to Tele. So right now we're just doing this for 4 months. And that's really kind of where I'm at now, like present time. If I kind of take the time to just reflect on things, you know, as you guys heard from the beginning and how bad things were and how I am now, I would say things are definitely better. I don't cry every single day before work now. I definitely do have the days that I do, you know, tear up and maybe have to just cry it out if you have like a really bad day. But I feel like after a while that's normal. I feel like no matter how much time you have, like I feel like really, really stressful days will just like get to you, and sometimes you just need to cry it out. And, you know, I really am at that point where I feel like even on really bad days, I feel like I can handle it, and I feel like I've experienced enough where I'm not as scared. But of course, you know, you just never know what will happen with patients. But I feel like I'm definitely at the point where I feel like prepared, in that like I don't know everything, but I feel like I can figure out, okay, like what I have to do for this patient. Now seeing the new nurses on the floor and, you know, them coming to you and asking you questions and asking you to help them with things, and you kind of know how to do it. And I feel like little things like that, you're like, wow, you know, I really know how to do my job. And it really just like helps you even more reflect on, wow, like how much I've grown. You're not like at that new grad stage anymore. With any job, you know, there's always something that you can take out of it, and, you know, there's many skills that I will take with this. And even if I'm not in cardiac, there's a lot of things that you learn that are good to know. And I feel like that there's a lot of skills that you'll take into your next job, and you'll just keep expanding your skills. And I feel like that's, you know, the beauty of nursing, is that there's so much you can do and there's so much you can experience, and it just makes you, you know, a better and better nurse. Now, I'm so excited to announce that I have finally got a call that I got a new job. Oh my god, it feels so crazy to say that, but it is so bittersweet. So the new job that I, you know, got a call about was to work as a postpartum nurse, which is so crazy because towards the end, like, it was either for me like NICU or OR. Like postpartum kind of wasn't even like on my mind. The interview was like a walkthrough interview, which was like even cooler. I feel like because of COVID, I guess she said this was why she was doing things this way, but I feel like every unit should do things this way. But essentially she was asking me questions as she was showing me around the unit, you know, the nursery, what the rooms look like. And she also was like the sweetest manager ever. You know, she kind of already loved that, you know, I had COVID experience, and moms can still end up being positive. So they do, you know, of course, separate them. And so that part, you know, I already am accustomed to, you know, donning and doffing and kind of knowing, you know, what goes into that part of it. And essentially I would just kind of have to learn the pediatric part of it and the education part and, you know, breastfeeding and all that stuff. So, you know, I feel like we really clicked, and when I left the interview, I was kind of like, wow, like that was such an awesome interview. And even if I don't get it, like, I don't feel like there's anything that I could have done more, because I felt like I did such a great job at explaining myself. I felt like I answered her questions very thoroughly, and, you know, it seemed like she really liked my responses. So I felt just like really good about the interview. So at the point I was like, whatever happens, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. So when I got the call, I was just like, oh my god, like I knew that we vibed, because it was such a good interview and I was just so ecstatic. I feel like people like having babies, it's like such a positive environment, and I feel like that's what I'm, you know, most excited about. I just want to be in a positive environment, and for the most part, you know, everyone's happy having kids, right? But it's still nights, which kind of was a little bit of a bummer. but I feel like, you know, if I really like it, it might not be as miserable if I actually enjoy, you know, somewhat going into work. And, you know, I could always work my way up to end up going a day. So it's not the best, but it's also not the worst. So I'm super excited. I don't have an official start date yet. When I went on the interview, the idea was that I would start somewhere mid to end May, because one of their nurses is going into the NICU and I essentially am just taking over her position. So the recruiter said that she would call me back with an official start date, but that the job was mine. So yeah, so to end this really sad story with a happy ending, I feel like that's kind of why I wanted to share this, because even when things seem really bad and it seems like, you know, things just like will never get better, you know, I truly believed that. I was like, I'm gonna be stuck here and I'm gonna be miserable for a very long time. I worked really hard to just, you know, change my future and to like try to remain as positive as possible. And I know I wasn't always great at doing that, at being positive, because, you know, it's very hard when you're just thinking like you really just, you know, you want something different and you know that you'll be so much happier doing something different. I just kept, you know, praying. I prayed a lot this last year. I just kept praying and I knew that something good was gonna come soon, and it did. This job too, I don't know if I said it, it's at my hospital, so a lot of it is already familiar. You know, it's just training at this new floor, which is so nice. So I feel like a lot of the essentials of being a new nurse, like I kind of have down. So now it'll be nice to just be in a different environment and get to know how to do things their way. But I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be with the babies, and everyone around me is just so happy for me because they know how much I've been wanting this and how much this last year took such a toll on me. I'm here to tell you, you know, even on those days that are like so hard and you feel like it's never gonna get better, you know, trust me when I say things do eventually get better. It takes time, it does get better, and it does take patience, but, you know, just keep focus on what you want and where you want to be, and, you know, contacting people and being on top of people is literally the key. Get your name out there. Don't be afraid. The worst that they could say is no, and that's fine. You just keep contacting other people. I feel like people appreciate when you make the effort to, you know, reach out to them and show interest in telling them that this is something that you really want. I feel like people really love to hear that. But I am so excited, and I'm so excited to share this next chapter of my life with you guys. I know I wasn't able to really do that last time because I wasn't really doing YouTube, but I definitely will bring you guys along this time and just kind of show you how orientation is and how it's going, and, you know, how I'm liking it. So I'm gonna end the video here, guys, before it gets way too long. Thank you guys so much for watching this, and I hope you guys enjoy it and enjoy little story times like this. But make sure to give this a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. I have a lot more videos coming up. I'm filming again this week. Nick and I are going to Philadelphia, so I feel like I want to vlog that. And I feel like while we're there, like I maybe want to do like some kind of fun video. So stay tuned for that. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.